The unspoken vow. This is the story of Ethan, an 18-year-old boy who moved to the city to pursue his college dreams, and his Aunt Hằng, now Aunt Claire, the woman who became. This narrative serves as a reminder that sometimes the line between familial affection and sinful craving can blur dangerously, pushing two lonely souls. His voice was hoarse with lust and a tremor of fear. Aunt Claire's breath brushed against his face, carrying the familiar scent of jasmine and her own. She snapped softly, but there was no anger in her voice, only confusion and a hint of pleading. Ethan ignored her, wrapping his arms tightly around her slender back. I know. Instead of pushing him away, her hand trembled and clutched lightly at. I was an 18-year-old country boy, wet behind the ears, arriving in the city of Los Angeles to study for my college entrance exams. My parents had entrusted me to the care of Uncle David, my father's younger brother. That day, for the first time in my life, I met Aunt Claire, Uncle David's wife. The moment she stepped out to open the door, I froze. She was beautiful, with the ripe, mature beauty that none of the girls my age possessed. Her skin was fair, her long dark hair fell to her waist, and especially her expressive eyes always seemed to hold a distant sadness. "Come in, son. You must be tired from the long journey." She offered a gentle smile, a forced one that couldn't hide her melancholy. My life at my aunt and uncle's house began like that. Uncle David, who worked in the oil and gas industry, was away on site all the time, sometimes returning only once a month. This large house was mostly just occupied by Aunt Claire and me. Every time Uncle David returned home, he was sullen and exhausted, and their conversations often ended in him snapping at her. As for I felt sorry for her, initially just the pity of a nephew for his unhappy aunt. I started helping her with chores, from cleaning and cooking to watering the plants. I wanted to make her happy, to see her true smile. In those moments when we worked together, the distance between us gradually shortened. I got to smell the shampoo in her hair, and occasionally my hand would accidentally brush her soft one. The climax came one afternoon when I was fumbling for something in the storage room and unintentionally passed the bathroom. The door was through the crack. I saw her pristine white back with sparkling water droplets trailing down her smooth skin. I was rooted to the spot, my heart pounding like a drum. I knew I was committing a forbidden act, but I couldn't move my feet. From that day on, my pity transformed into another kind of feeling, a sinful craving. I no longer dared to look her straight in the eyes. Every night, her image returned in my dreams, tormenting my mind. Then Uncle David went away on another assignment, a longer trip than usual, leaving just the two of us in the house again. The atmosphere became strangely suffocating. We avoided each other more, but the silence only made the hidden desires more intense. Until that fateful night, a major storm hit the city. The wind howled through the cracks, the rain hammered the roof, and suddenly the power went out, plunging the whole house into pitch darkness. I heard Aunt Claire gasp in fear from the next. "Aunt Claire, are you okay?" I quickly found a candle, lit it, and brought it to her room. In the flickering candlelight, I saw her sitting. I sat down on the edge of the bed, feeling awkward. It was Aunt Claire who broke the silence. She began to talk, telling me about her loneliness in this house, about Uncle David's coldness, and about the long nights she spent alone facing the four walls. Tears streamed down her face. Without hesitation, I reached out to wipe them away. The warmth of her skin transferred to my hand. We sat like that for a long time amidst the storm outside and the frantic beating of both our hearts. When the emotional storm subsided, I realized how close we were. Her scent enveloped me, alluring and inviting. And then I uttered that insane sentence. "Will you sleep with me tonight?" After her nod, all boundaries collapsed. That night, amidst the howling rain, too lonely and our lives seemed to return to normal, but in reality, they had changed forever. During the day, we were still aunt and nephew, but at night, when my uncle was asleep, we secretly sought each other out in the dark. Every time that happened, I felt both happy and I knew I was on the wrong path, but I couldn't stop. Like Aunt Claire, we had become each other's biggest secret, and Uncle Andrews, the Uncle Sao character mentioned later in the Vietnamese text, rough voice, full of teasing, replied, "Is that right? Look at you can't take it anymore, can you?" A stifled Ethan lay on the other side of the wall, his heart feeling like it wanted to burst out of his chest. He squeezed his eyes shut, but everything only became clearer. The whole thing actually started the night the house was silent, only the chirping of crickets outside, but that very stillness allowed Ethan to clearly hear the sounds coming from the Ethan couldn't make out what they were saying, but the intimate, close tone kept him awake. He tossed and turned, trying to force himself to sleep, but the sounds that followed pulled him into a state of heightened awareness. "Ah, slow down, please." Aunt Claire's voice softly rang out, both pouting and sweet. "It's just that I missed you so much." Uncle David's voice was hoarse with desire, half trying to stop him, half sinking into pleasure. Ethan lay perfectly still, his heart pounding in his chest. In the dark, the daytime image of Aunt Claire with her shiny black hair, smooth white skin, and soft figure appeared vividly. He couldn't stop himself from imagining Uncle David hugging his aunt's sexy body tightly, their eyes full of passion. He pulled the blanket over his head, but those inviting sounds still crept through the fabric, deeply carving into the imagination of the young man. The next morning, Ethan left his room and saw Aunt Claire carrying a basin of water into the yard. Her face was strangely radiant, her cheeks rosier than usual. Ethan quickly bowed his head in a low greeting, trying to hide his awkward gaze. She just smiled lightly, a pure smile, completely unaware of the turmoil in her nephew's heart, and continued her routine, leaving behind an He was about to return to his distant worksite. Ethan could barely focus on the food, as his eyes were involuntarily drawn to Aunt Claire. Tonight, she was wearing below she wore light blue shorts, hugging her long, fair thighs. Every time she bent down to scoop food or leaned over, the top would slightly slip, revealing dinner ended, everyone went to bed early, and once again the quiet space became a vivid soundstage, travelling through the thin wall. The faint creaking of the bed, then Uncle David's voice. "No need to hold back this time, Claire. You're so beautiful, I've missed you like crazy." After that sentence came sounds no longer hidden. Aunt Claire's soft moans, quick breaths mingled with Uncle David's intimate whispers. Ethan lay rigid under the covers, his whole body burning up as if he had a fever. The image of Aunt Claire in the spaghetti-strap top that evening, her pale skin and long "Oh, but you like it, don't you? Look at you can't take it anymore, can you?" Uncle David's voice replied, both joking and utterly captivating. Ethan squeezed his eyes shut, trying to drive away those. Every sigh from Aunt Claire, every tender word from Uncle David burned away the innocence in him, a fire he didn't know how to extinguish. The next morning, the family woke up earlier than usual to send off Uncle David. Ethan's gaze inadvertently swept over Aunt Claire. She had changed into a simple outfit, a form-fitting t-shirt, and soft fabric pants that accentuated her long legs. Her dark hair was tied up high, revealing her smooth white nape. Every gesture she made, no matter how small, exuded an irresistible. When breakfast was over, Uncle David slung his bag over his shoulder, ready to head out. Ethan backed away into the house, but some invisible force kept his feet rooted near the door, his eyes unable to leave his aunt's back. Outside the gate, Aunt Claire, her clear laugh rang out. Through the crack in the door, Ethan saw Uncle David suddenly bend down and place a long, deep kiss on her lips. It wasn't a quick peck. His hand was placed on the back of her neck, pulling her closer. Meanwhile, Aunt Claire slightly stood on her toes, leaning into his embrace, her cheeks faintly flushed. Ethan stood frozen behind the door, his chest aching with a strange mix of jealousy and intense yearning. He couldn't tear his eyes away from their entwined lips, or the way Uncle David tightly held her slender waist. "I'm serious, I'm going crazy missing you." Aunt Claire's voice whispered over the phone, both cooing and yearning. On the other end, Uncle David's deep voice was hoarse. "Missing me, huh? Tell me about it, what do you miss?" Aunt Claire was silent for a moment, then her voice dropped to a whisper, like a breath. "Everything. The way you hold me, the way you whisper in my ear when you are at your strongest." Ethan froze in his room, his face burning hot. He didn't want to listen, but the thin wall couldn't block those forbidden words from creeping into his mind. That was a conversation Ethan had accidentally overheard. 2 months after Uncle David left for the worksite, Ethan remembered clearly the sight of Aunt Claire's soft figure and lingering gaze that morning. She watched Uncle David's car until it was out of sight. Once the car was gone, the house returned to its normal rhythm. But the image of their lingering farewell kept repeating in Ethan's mind like a slow-motion film. He tried to force himself to focus on his books, but every time he saw his aunt busy in the kitchen or heard her gentle laugh, his heart would stir in an indescribable way. Ethan knew this feeling was wrong, a sin, but the more he tried to deny it, the more it felt like a whirlpool, dragging him deeper into confused thoughts about his beautiful aunt. 2 months flew by. In the beginning, Aunt Claire still maintained her usual cheerful demeanor. But as the waiting dragged on, Ethan began to notice changes. Her eyes were occasionally pensive, staring blankly out at the empty. Then, faint sounds began to emanate from her room. Ethan wasn't intentionally eavesdropping, but in the quiet house, her voice was clearly audible. "Honey, when are you coming home? It's been too long, I miss you." Uncle David's warm voice echoed from the other end of the line. "Every day at work, all I want is to finish up and rush back to you and our daughter." "But it's been 2 months, honey." Her voice suddenly deepened with a hint of reproach. "I'm so lonely. During the day, I have things to do, but at night, lying alone, I can't sleep. I just keep missing you." At this, "I can't take it either. Thinking about you here, about the nights we spent together, makes me crave you." Aunt Claire let out a soft laugh, an intentional, knowing laugh. "Yet you left me alone for so long. I'm serious, I'm going crazy missing you." Missing me, huh? Tell me about it. What do you miss?" After a moment of hesitation, she whispered, "I miss the way you hold me, the way you whisper in my ear when you are at your strongest. I miss the way you moan softly, the way your body wraps around me. Every time I think about it, I just want to drop everything and rush back." "Then come home soon. I can't bear it anymore." "Aunt, I keep thinking about you and the nights we spent together, and I don't know what to do. Come on, don't drive me crazy. If I hear you say one more word, I might abandon the worksite." Uncle David chuckled awkwardly. "Then come home, I'll wait," Aunt Claire said softly, her voice fading as if trying to swallow her emotions whole. The call lasted a few more minutes, but Ethan couldn't listen any more. He buried his face in his hands, his whole body burning, as if he had just had a fever. Ethan knew he shouldn't have eavesdropped, but those passionate words kept echoing in his mind, consuming him. That night, he couldn't sleep. The following afternoon, Aunt Claire had just finished her shower. As she reached for the clean clothes hanging on the hook, the silk dress slipped from her hand and plopped onto the wet bathroom floor. She sighed in annoyance, looked around, and thinking that the grandmother and little Vivian were still playing outside, and Ethan surely hadn't returned yet, she came up with a... After glancing around and seeing no one, she took a deep breath and quickly dashed toward her bedroom. At that exact moment, Ethan was sweeping the hallway right outside her room. He was completely unaware of what was about to happen until a white blur Ah! A piercing scream rang out. Ethan jumped and turned around, and in that instant, he froze. Right before his eyes, Aunt Claire, completely naked, was darting toward her bedroom. Her long, wet hair fell over her shoulders. "Ethan, Ethan!" Her voice trembled, lost in the darkness. When his room door burst open, she rushed in, clutching little Vivian, who was sound asleep. Her face was frantic. "There's someone outside the window. I'm so scared." She was panting, her eyes wide with panic. "Can little Vivian and I sleep in your room tonight?" Ethan's heart leaped with joy. The plan had worked. But to understand why Aunt Claire was running frantically into her nephew's room in the middle of the night, we have to go back to the story from a few days earlier. That afternoon, the late honey gold sunlight filtered through the pomelo leaves, casting sparkling patches of light onto the brick courtyard. Ethan sat on the porch, a book open on his lap, but his mind... He had just accidentally walked in, unaware that Aunt Claire had just finished her bath. The image of her in that momentary panic, quickly covering herself, her body still bearing clear water droplets, kept haunting his mind. "Oh my God, Ethan!" Her terrified... He could only mumble an apology and turn away, his whole body burning up. Aunt Claire said nothing, just rushed into her bedroom and slammed the door shut. Behind the door, she leaned her back against it, her heart still pounding. Damn it, what did the boy see? She didn't know how to face Ethan anymore. While lost in thought, Ethan suddenly heard the trickling sound of water from the old wooden bathroom behind the house. His eyes involuntarily glanced at a gap in the wooden wall, warped by years. Through that gap, a blurred image appeared. Under the faint light filtering in, Aunt Claire's fair, rosy skin seemed to glow. Ethan quickly turned away, his heart pounding wildly. Not long after, the grandmother received news that she had to return to her hometown urgently for a week to take care of family matters. Before leaving, she instructed the two of them to look after little Vivian and the house carefully. The house suddenly became empty and strangely quiet, leaving only Ethan, Aunt Claire. He knew his aunt was easily startled, especially when only 2 adults were home. A bold plan formed in his head. Ethan tiptoed out of his room, his steps as light as a cat's in the night. Taking a deep breath, he reached out and tapped lightly on the glass frame. Knock, knock. No sound from inside. Who is out there? Aunt Claire's voice trembled with alarm. Ethan held his breath, dropping his voice to a deep, ghostly tone, and called out, "Claire, oi!" The spooky, drawn-out call. She bolted up, her hand shaking as she slightly pulled back the curtain. Through the gap, she only saw... Without a second's hesitation, she rushed to the bed, picked up the sleeping Vivian, flung open the room door, and ran straight towards Ethan's room. Hearing his aunt's hurried footsteps, Ethan quickly snuck back to his room, jumped into bed, and pulled the blanket over his head, pretending to be fast asleep. And then his room door flew open. "Yes, of course," Ethan quickly replied, trying to hide his triumphant smile. He got out of bed and locked the door securely. He spread out extra blankets and pillows on the floor right next to his bed. Aunt Claire She lay close to the edge of the bed, her eyes still filled with worry. "Aunt Claire, don't be afraid," Ethan said, his voice trying to sound mature. "I'm here, don't..." "Ethan, we can't do this." My voice trembled. His hot breath was on the back of my neck. Aunt Claire, his hand was no longer timid. It tightened around my waist, pulling. I knew that once this door was opened, it could never be closed again. I think there's no one there. It's just the wind. Ethan reassured me, his voice very gentle. I nodded faintly, trying to. It's a good thing you're here, I whispered. Otherwise, I don't know what I would have done. Ethan just smiled without saying anything, but his eyes held a small spark of joy. The joy of someone who had succeeded in their plan. That night, when everything was quiet, I lay silently on the bed, listening to the steady breathing of little Vivian and Ethan beside me. Ethan's trick, though a moment of impulsiveness, made him realize he wanted to be near me more often. Not just in moments like this. As for me, though I had drifted off to sleep, after the incident last night, I decided to continue sleeping in Ethan's room with little Vivian. I didn't want to admit it, but the presence of this young man gave me a rare sense of peace. Little Vivian was sleeping soundly in the middle of the bed. Ethan and I lay on either side, our eyes wide open, each lost in our own thoughts. Aunt Claire, do you know? Ethan suddenly spoke. His voice trembled but was firm. I don't know how to say it, but every day I'm here I feel more and more fond of you. The room fell silent, with only the sound of the wind softly blowing through the crack in the door. I didn't say anything, but inside me was a storm. My eyes must have betrayed all the surprise, hesitation, and a faint, deep stirring that had just been awakened. Ethan, you shouldn't say such things, I replied softly, my voice reproachful but not firm enough. I am your aunt. What you are feeling might just be temporary emotions. Ethan shook his head, his voice more certain. No, Aunt Claire, I know what I'm thinking, and this isn't a temporary feeling. I know how important you are to me. I don't want to see you lonely. I don't want you to have to endure the sadness alone when I turned my face away, not daring to look into his eyes, but I felt my shoulders lightly trembling. Ethan hesitated for a moment, then gently reached out and touched my shoulder. I didn't turn back, but I also didn't push his hand away. In that moment, there seemed to be an invisible thread between us, a vague connection like two rivers silently flowing toward each other. Ethan slightly leaned closer. It wasn't boldness, but a tender respect. My body trembled, but I didn't stop him. Inside, my reason and heart were fiercely. I looked up, meeting Ethan's eyes full of trust and longing. His hand began to move, slowly tracing a path on my body. The thin nightgown slightly slipped. Every touch seemed to compensate for my long days of loneliness. That night, he used all the awkwardness and fervour of his youth to make me forget everything. In his arms, the end of the story of Aunt Claire and Ethan is a tragedy of loneliness and an unmet need for affection. In a large house lacking the love of her husband, Uncle David, Aunt Claire found comfort, safety, and intense desire in her young. For Ethan, Aunt Claire was not just a beautiful woman, but the embodiment of the tenderness and emotional connection. Loneliness is the seed of error. The coldness and absence of Uncle David created a huge emotional void, pushing Aunt Claire to seek connection in a forbidden place. It underscores the importance of nurturing and maintaining emotion. Emotional craving can override reason. Both Aunt Claire and Ethan were torn between reason, morality, family relationship, and emotion, love, desire. The story shows that when emotional needs are suppressed to personal responsibility in relationships. Although loneliness was a root cause, every sweet secret eventually comes with immense torment and guilt.